One of the things that's purely amazing about beliefs in crocodilians is that so many of them are based on people not having correct observations of these animals. Their observations they interpret completely differently than they should be interpreting them. Cuban crocodile is sort of the ultimate example of that in the crocodilian world. Over the years, the Cuban crocodiles have been described as the most vicious, dangerous brutes on the planet, etc., etc., etc. Quite simply, Cuban crocodiles are intelligent, very active crocodilians. They have extremely efficient metabolisms. And when I first started working with Cuban crocodiles, I heard all the same rhetoric that was out there, and yet the more I watched them, the more it didn't seem to be encompassing what the Cuban crocodile really was. The Cuban crocodile is in fact an animal that is about 180 degrees from what people believe it is. Instead of it being this vicious, horrific brute, it turns out that they come from an area that is almost bereft of prey most of the year. So they have to go along, grab anything that moves and a whole lot of things that don't move, just so it doesn't get away from them. They have very little to eat compared to most crocodilians. So in the charm of their lives, anything that moves in the wind or anything that falls near them, their first instinct is to run and grab it. Well, you can see how this could be a problem for human beings, because if they're moving, it doesn't mean that we're necessarily prey, it just means we're something potential. I very quickly started to understand that this enhanced feeding mode that they go into was something that could easily be mollified with a little bit of training. Once you teach them that it's not time to eat, they're a completely different animal. They drop out of feeding response mode and are some of the most wonderful animals in the world to work with. Again, here we have a bunch of myths about crocodilians that still in the scientific community are still supported by many pieces of literature and so on, but the realities are quite different. We have animals that are a joy to work with, that are easy to train and tame, that are much safer to work with once they have been trained, once they have been worked with, once they have been accustomed to it. One of the things that has to be stressed when you're working with any animal is safety. More for the animals than for the people in many cases, because modern times are absolutely rife with situations where people have done stupid things and ended up inevitably with the animal being killed. Like the clamoring that's being done for the orca, where in fact, if you examine what was going on, the folks at SeaWorld know what they're doing. They know very well what they're doing. Are accidents like that preventable? Sometimes. Sometimes it's a hazard of the job. If you're a race car driver, you know there's always a chance there's going to crash. There are many, many situations in our lives that are risky. The lady who was working the orcas knew what she was doing. She also knew the inherent risks of working with an animal that large. And I applaud the people from SeaWorld for not bowing to many of these animal rights groups who are making outlandish claims with very little information about what these whales are, what SeaWorld is doing, and the incredible benefits that have come from SeaWorld having these animals in captivity. Anyone that I work with or anyone that I train always hears one thing from me at the very beginning, and that is, your first bite could be your last bite, so we don't want any bites. Again, anything from an allergic reaction to a single tooth in the wrong place could mean a tragedy. So safety is number one. And although what I am about to do may not look safe, it's a situation of, I know what I've done with this animal. She knows me. I know what she's capable of. She knows what I want. And I can also tell if she's having a bad day. And that is a very important point. We never allow animals to have a bad day. Everybody stops and says, oh my God, this was terrible or that was awful. Yet if your coworker goes after you one day and just verbally takes you apart or does something and then the next day comes and apologizes, everything's fine. In many cases, the only way an animal has to show that he's unhappy or there's a problem with him is to lash out. Why is the animal never allowed to have a bad day? People need to think about that before they get reactionary about this bit me or that happened or something else went on. Sometimes, in fact, it is. You shouldn't be working that animal that day because it is having a bad day. And if I see that, I very quickly decide that's an animal that needs to be left alone today. So with that in mind, we're going to go over and talk to Carmen. I am holding a couple of rats in my hand, which are two of her favorite things in the world. Remember what I just said about Cuban crocodiles and their appetite. They have a supernormal appetite, and that is the only way that they survive in the wild. So what we're going to do is we're going to let Carmen come out a little bit, and I'm going to tell her she can't have any of these rats. She will be very anxious, and at some point I will let her have those rats. Again, I'm not using the rats as a training mechanism. I'm using them right now as more showing what she's capable of and what she will do. Come on, babe. Carmen. Come on. Come on. You can come up. Oh, you know where you're supposed to stay, huh? She's been through this drill before. The other thing you got to recognize is that crocodilians are roughly 3 times faster than most human beings. Carmen, steak. And with that speed, if you're within striking distance, keep in mind that you certainly could get injured or harmed. Carmen is a little bit upset because she didn't get any chicken the other day when we were feeding. So she's feeling her oats today. Could she easily sideswipe and get me? Yes. Will she? No. She's been trained not to do that. She can see the rats in my hand. They're twirling around. She wants them badly. She's behaving like she should, staying out of feeding posture. And when I think she's done it long enough, then I'm going to let her have those. Carmen, okay. That's a good girl. Good girl. And you notice her putting her head down again, looking for another one. She can see the one that's in my hand. She knows that's not one she's supposed to come and get. And she's doing the right thing. Carmen, steak. That's just a word, by the way, that I use with crocs. I use the word steak. This is my friend Babalu. He's also a Cuban crocodile. He's a big male, very robust male. He's, I guess, pushing about 9 feet in length now. And he's a very well-mannered young man. He's one of the animals that I work with periodically. Have him come out, take little walks, and go from one place to another. And this goes back to what I was talking about as far as a management tool with these crocodiles. If we want to move an animal from one pen to another for whatever reason, maybe we want to breed the animal or we want to do maintenance or what have you, most of the animals we have will move simply by us having them walk along and go from one place to another, following along as we give them a nudge or instruction or what have you. Babalu likes few things better in life than a nice plump rat, so I'm going to go get him a rat. We'll just again demonstrate what we do with these guys. Babalu, steak. Now it's going to take a little bit with him to get him down and relaxed for a couple of reasons. He's very excited seeing all these other people around here, a lot of activity and so forth. I am barely resting this pole. As you can see, it's just slipped out, trying to demonstrate that that's what I'm doing. He is just absolutely beside himself. You see him moving those hind legs. He wants that rat so badly. It's hanging here in my left hand. I'm not preventing him with the pole, and as I said, you saw how loosely I was holding it. It just fell out of my hand. Again, the pole's a focal point. I take the pole away, he'll still do the same thing, but I want his focus on that pole. I want him to understand this is what I want. He's relaxed out of feeding posture. I don't use the pole now, and he's been a good croc. I'm not rewarding him with the rat. This is just simply one of the exercises we do, is running through this. Any other Cuban croc this size would have been over here just biting at everything in sight, again with that enhanced feeding response. Okay, good boy. Good boy. Let me get him one more. Good croc. But again, you can see the slow movement rather than him running out at me and doing the crazy stuff that most Cubans will do if they haven't had some lessons in manners. Here, let's go over to your corner. Here. It's your food corner. Good boy. One of the things we often do with the crocs is we'll establish one particular corner in the cage as their feeding area. And all you have to do is say food or feeding or food corner, the verbiage that I use. And you saw before I even got near there, he was heading over. He knew what to do and what the drill was. It's two different species, northern and southern. This particular pair is a pair of long captive animals. But if you'll notice something odd about her, she and her mate were at another facility here in the United States, and they had some difficulties at this facility with some dietary issues, and she has no teeth. Well, she has a few teeth now. She's getting a few coming in after a long, long time. But in addition to the straight-out dietary issues, the tooth capsules themselves had discrete infections in them, and in many cases that killed the active tooth bud. So with the way we feed here, they can still be absolutely fine with no teeth. Obviously it would be a tremendous disadvantage if these animals were out in the wild, but once again it shows that we can take an animal with a disability and give it a good home and keep it as part of a genetic bank so that these genes are captured, so that these animals will be able to breed. Getting crocodiles to breed in captivity sometimes is a challenge. There are many types of behavior. Some of them are species specific and some of them are just idiosyncratic to the individuals. These animals have been breeding for the past 2.5 or 3 years. We think that we will see something out of them in the relatively near future because some of the problems that they had are starting to resolve. But crocodiles do many things slowly, including get better from problems or illnesses like this. I'm going to have the female come over, but I can virtually guarantee you as soon as the male sees me drop a rat, he'll be out in a heartbeat. So, atta girl, go over there and have yourself a rat dinner. One true tragedy was in the recent confiscation that I experienced, the break-in and just destruction of our facilities up north. An absolutely beautiful New Guinea crocodile female, for which I had just found a mate this last winter, was killed by inexpert hands dealing with animals that they had no familiarity with, and it was truly a tragedy. I had kept that animal for over 35 years in hopes of finding a mate, and she was the other species of New Guinea crocodile. Now if we look over here, you'll see the male starting to come up. He's never one to miss a meal. So in a moment we'll have a couple more rats and we'll bring him up too. We're going to go over to a pair of Cuban crocodiles over here. They breed about every other year, a male and a female. You'll see first of all that there's quite a size difference between the two. The female is smaller. In Cuban crocodiles there's quite a bit of sexual dimorphism, although I have a couple of very large females that rival most of the males in size, but they're also very old animals. These animals are quite young, as crocodilians go. And breeding age on most crocs is pretty much akin to human breeding age if they're allowed to come up in a natural fashion and you're not overfeeding them. Usually figure between 12 and 15 years of age and they're ready to breed.